It's PODRZEBIE, the comic book nerdcast that dares to ask, what? Me worry?
All right, we're here in the Heroine Worship Department.
That's right. You know her, you love her. Talking Wonder Woman today.
Wonder Woman! Wonder Woman!
Maybe you don't love her. I don't know. Specifically, we're talking Golden Age Wonder Woman. So that's like 1941 to 1954. But before we get into that, let's just give our thoughts on Wonder Woman broadly from any time period. Sort of maybe how we encountered her and what our feelings are towards her as a character.
The only way I know how to talk about Wonder Woman is broadly.
Yikes. Obviously, you haven't been reading your Wonder Woman.
I think most of what I know about Wonder Woman is formed by modern Wonder Woman.
Do you read superhero comics? Do you watch superhero movies like DC?
Well, yeah.
Do you like the DC universe?
I love DC. DC is what I read primarily.
When did you first sort of encounter Wonder Woman? Would you know?
Oh man. No, to be honest, I don't even remember the first time I did. I think the first time where I started enjoying her in the modern age was DC 10 years ago did a reboot of their entire universe, and it was called The New 52.
Oh yeah, yes. I know about this.
And so like 52 in the DC universe is like a special number for whatever reason. But anyway, I think it was Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang were on that book, and it was really cool. It was just Wonder Woman in the modern era, and I remember thinking it was cool, but I don't really remember any of the stories that came out of it. But you had a really great writer and a really great artist in Cliff Chang. But that was like the first time I started paying attention to Wonder Woman in her own books and in her own stories.
Okay. I don't really read superhero comics so much other than the Golden Age, but I would have encountered Wonder Woman on Super Friends when I was like 3 or 4.
These are the Super Friends.
Yeah.
And then also, I did have those Fisher Price story tape and books. Did you ever have any of those?
No.
I had at least 3 of them. I might have had 4. One of them was Wonder Woman, and I loved those books. They were great. They were like, it was like a kid's picture book, but
Yeah.
the story was on tape, and it was like acted out like a play. So you'd put the
Yeah.
tape in your tape recorder and read along. There was kind of music cues and stuff. And she was in there, and I didn't really care for her specifically, because I was a little boy. I didn't play girl characters when I was really young.
Yeah.
Although I had a lot of friends who were girls, so Wonder Woman was a good character for me in the sense that like I would play with my little friends, and so they could be Wonder Woman or whatever because they wouldn't cross the gender streams either. But then also she had that American flag motif, which is always a turn off for me for a character.
Oh,
like,
I thought you were going to say the opposite. Like that was really got you going.
no, I mean, like our idiot listeners can't see this, but right now every item of Patrick's clothing, including his 10-gallon cowboy hat, is completely emblazoned with an all-over American flag pattern. But, I just find it a little gratuitous myself,
To each their own.
But I do love me some Golden Age Wonder Woman. And so a little backstory about the character. She was created by William Moulton Marston under his nom de plume, Charles Moulton. And she was heavily influenced by his wife, Elizabeth Holloway, with whom he co-invented the lie detector test. Yeah, very cool.
Sorry. I get excited about that.
Well, we'll talk about that in just a second if you want. And also their lover, Olive Byrne, and they had a long-term polyamorous relationship with sadomasochistic and bondage dynamic. And they all lived together, both women and Marston and his children from both of them, all in one household. And this fact looms over every conversation about Wonder Woman because it is an alternative lifestyle. So you had something to say about the lie detector test?
Yeah. That now seems like the least interesting part of him. But I do think it's like somewhat remarkable that he invented this piece of equipment. He and his wife invented this piece of equipment that is still used. And, it's not admissible in American court. Apparently it's easy to game if you know how. But I think it's fascinating when like things that are so pervasive have such an interesting story behind them.
even just as a concept of the lie detector test is like, it's a very fun trope like to have in comics and stuff. I always find it interesting. It's like you've got William Moulton Marston on one hand, and it's like he co-invented the lie detector test. And on the other hand, you've got Frederick Wortham, and he defended Albert Fish, notorious child murderer Albert Fish.
No, he
in
didn't.
court. He did. Yeah, he was the psychologist brought in to testify that he was in fact crazy and so shouldn't receive the death penalty.
Okay, but I could see that Albert Fish might actually be crazy.
Well, he was, right? Like, that's the thing.
But Marsden wasn't, so he wasn't just an invent, like he was a psychologist and he like studied at Harvard. He was like no slouch, right? He was.
Yeah, he was definitely an academic, and they all were, like, they were all kind of like academics and intellectuals and writers.
Yeah.
And
hence their perversion.
Yeah, and libertines. So now, when I first heard about his personal life, I kind of pictured him like living in a compound with like his front-facing proper wife, and then Olive Byrne was like a sex slave he kept chained up.
Yeah.
But I think it actually was pretty wholesome and like a relatively normal household. Like the kids didn't know like Moulton was their father, even though he kind of raised them as that. Like they had like a sort of cover story because it was illegal what they were doing, right?
Yeah.
You know, but each woman named one of their kids after the other woman. And like they loved each other, and you know they were all feminists and intellectuals, and you know I bet it was probably like a pretty like loving and stable household.
Yeah.
And the kids probably just didn't know about the lie, you know.
Gosh, I mean, this is like getting way off into the woods, but I wonder what effect that had on them as they got older. Like, did they ever find out, and were they like, wait a second?
They were eventually told, but I think Marston died young.
Yeah.
And so I think it might have been after his death or like as his death was approaching. But I think he was already like a father figure to them in the household. It was probably a situation where like maybe the kids already knew. I don't know exactly what the cover story is, so don't quote me on this. But I think it would probably be like Olive is like the mother of like these kids and their father died or something. And because they were actually adopted by the Marstons legally.
Yeah.
And they had like a cover story for like the law as well. It's very interesting. You can look it up. But Marston had some really interesting beliefs, and his experience developing the lie detector test convinced him that women were more honest and that they should rule the world. And basically his belief was that the masculine notion of freedom is about domination. Like dominating others, the domination of land and resources, but, you know, also domination in the sense of like driving around in a giant pickup truck like an asshole and owning a bunch of guns, you know, like he uses the term domination and submission in like a very like common way. So they have a lot of different meanings. And then the feminine concept of freedom in his mind was submission to a loving authority. So like setting aside the ego and serving others in like a communist utopia like Star Trek. But, you know, also things like not being too proud to ask for help and stuff like that. Like he would consider that submission because you're like letting your guard down a bit and like sort of putting yourself in someone else's hands. So while he's not talking about dominance and submission in like a kinky sex way there, he also is, because he believes that on an interpersonal relationship level, that like BDSM play serves a sort of symbolic ritual function that has therapeutic value. He wrote a book, it was called like Yes, You're Normal or something. And it was like a psychological study of all sorts of different behaviors. And he thought that was good, basically, which, you know, I'm sure it is for a lot of people.
Well, it's interesting, though, that, I mean, and I didn't do any reading about this, but I'm going off of how you described it, but that the dominance is all negative things, and then the submission is all positive things.
I don't think so, no, because look, I can't explain it well enough, but he had like a 2-axis panel. So it's like dominance and submission, they would relate to certain situations. So it's like dominance is good in certain situations, but then like submission is bad in other situations.
Yeah. All right. Huh.
But the submission is like a form of like love. It's like sacrificing for others, whereas like dominance is more selfish.
Okay. Well, and this is where in one of the stories that we read, I think those themes come out really, really strongly. Yeah.
So let's get to him making comics. So in 1940, Marston was interviewed in Family Circle magazine, where he talked about the untapped potential for the comic book medium. And he name-checked all American publications as being sort of better than others for like giving a positive message with their superhero comics, like The Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkman. And this got the attention of All American Publications head, the publisher, Max Gaines, who was William Gaines's father.
Yeah.
William Gaines, publisher of Mad. At the time, the moral panic around comics was probably already brewing. And since Marston had name-checked him, he actually hired Marston as an educational consultant. And then in 1941, he creates Wonder Woman as psychological propaganda for the type of woman he wanted to rule the world. How do you feel about that? Keep in mind, this is like in World War II. This is going on after living through World War I. So you have to think about the world he lives in too. Like, war is pretty big deal,
It was a pretty big deal. It's not, so like in the United States, that's where most of our listeners are probably in. But like the World War I in Europe was devastating.
Yeah. Meat grinder is a term usually here.
In the US, it was a big deal, but it wasn't like we didn't feel the effects. Like we came in for like the last year or something, didn't we? Like we just.
Yeah. You made a lot of money.
Yeah. We came in to party. And then it was all wrapped up. But still, I mean, like a lot of people lost loved ones. And now we're in the beginning of World War II. It's very clear reading the Golden Age Wonder Woman that like lessons are being taught.
Yeah.
And it feels different than just the sort of surface level lessons that are taught in other superhero things like crime. Don't do crime, guys.
Yeah.
These are like social emotional lessons and interpersonal relationship dynamics that are trying to be explained to children.
And they're very heavy-handed too. Like he uses like really funny things like the names of the characters and stuff in funny ways. Okay, so I've got a quote. So I just want to compare what William Marston felt about Wonder Woman and what your boy, Frederick Wortham, felt about him. I'll read Marston's and then you can read Wortham's. Women's strong qualities have become despised because of their weakness. The obvious remedy is to create a feminine character with all the strength of Superman, plus all the allure of a good and beautiful woman. So, he's an early feminist, but I think if someone were to go out and say that now, you'd probably get punched in the face by a woman.
A first wave feminist would be like, oh, hell yeah. But a modern, like kind of third wave feminist would be like, a modern feminist would have that reaction you're talking about. But
if your grandpa said it, you'd be like, oh, okay, I guess he's pretty progressive or whatever, because whatever. But, the language does sound like, because of their weakness, it sounds like something that like Jordan Peterson would say or something, Only William Marston loved women and Jordan Peterson hates them.
He's married to one.
That's so she can't testify against him. All right. Here's what Frederick Wortham thought of Wonder Woman.
She is an undesirable ideal for girls, being the exact opposite of what girls are meant to be. To be strong is to be unwomanly, and to have strong, close associates who are female is automatically lesbian and horrific. So wait.
Fuck that guy.
It says, so women just have to be like alone?
Yeah, basically. Like they shouldn't have close associates, right? Like outside of the house because it's
horrible.
It's lesbian, automatically lesbian.
Yeah, I see lesbos all over.
I know, they're very prominent.
What is that, your friend? Gay.
Yeah, why can't they just be straight like dudes?
Listen,
I've got a little bit of publication history here of Wonder Woman. She first appears in All Star Comics #1 in 1941, and that's where we get her origin story. In that same month, she became the flagship character of Sensation Comics, which, incidentally, Sensation Comics should be called Fabulous Comics because it's great. It's campy. It's got those great crude colors and that sort of early ugly comic style. You get this Wonder Woman story that's always, just brimming with like lesbianism and S&M and just weirdness with all her close friends. Some of the other titles in the book, though. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Sensation Comics is John Waters' favorite comic.
Yeah, very much so. Like it wouldn't take much to sort of like turn this into like a real like radical queer comic. But some of the other titles in the book, which are mostly swashbuckling tales of dapper gentlemen set in the Romantic era, you've got Mr. Terrific, Black Pirate, and the Gay Ghost, who he couldn't be more gay, right? Like, he's like a guy possessed by like the ghost of Liberace, basically. And like, you know, if Liberace was like a 17th century highwayman, and the guy goes to sleep, and then like the gay ghost comes out of the closet and goes and like into the seedy underworld.
Oh my God.
And then there's Wildcat, who's basically a furry. And then there's this child superhero, Little Blue Boy, who blows a horn to summon the Blue Boys, Tubby and Tuffy. And together they fight crime in their button-flap pajamas.
Yeah, listen, I do have to take umbrage with you classifying Wildcat as a furry. Wildcat, I mean, well, he was a JSA member, I think. Don't fuck around with Wildcat. He's cool.
Those Justice League members are more super perverted.
Yeah,
You know?
but it's
they have this weird incestuous society. They all wear costumes.
Yeah, but it's hetero as hell.
I mean, I've read Watchmen.
Wildcat is yoked. He wears that cool mask that like goes down, so he has like the big cat cheeks where his cheeks are. It's like, it's one of the best superhero costumes ever designed. And I'm not being facetious.
Have you looked at him in Sensation Comics?
I'm looking at him right now. He's hot as hell.
He's got the big feet. Oh yeah, he's a real stud muffin. That a Wildcat. Anyway, so then in June of 42, she gets her own title, Wonder Woman, and that runs right up to 1986 with Crisis on Infinite Earths. So that has like a 44-year run or something. And then her book also, early on at least, featured a segment Wonder Women of History, which were short historical pieces about important women like Florence Nightingale and Sarah Bernhardt, as well
Bernhardt?
as no, Sarah Bernhardt, the French actress. And then there's some comedy filler as well. So the first one we looked at in All-Star Comics number 8, this is her origin story. I don't think we really need to go into this too much.
No, I'll say this is Max Gaines was involved in setting this up. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, he was the one publishing it.
Well, the amount of text in this, it doesn't surprise me that a Gaines was involved.
You don't get this as much in the later ones.
Oh, thank God. Dude, it's a tome.
Yeah. So basically, it's pretty simple. Steve Trevor crashes on Themyscira, which is like the secret island of the immortal Amazons. We get a history of Wonder Woman's mother, Queen Hippolyta, and the Amazons, and sort of how they sort of like left ancient Greece and settled here. They do an interesting thing of like inverting like Hercules. Hercules is a bad guy in that story.
Yeah, so she takes a shine to Colonel Steve Trevor, right?
Oh yeah, it's the first man she's ever met,
Yeah.
and she's like instantly like submitting to a loving authority.
I was about to say is that that's the first glimpse we see into that idea of submission. Twice though. One, she wants to be of service to Steve. She's like, hey, let me help him get back. His mission's important. I want to help him get back to the land of man. And her mom's like, no. And so she's like, well, what do? I don't know. That's my queen. I have to like kind of play by her rules.
Ultimately, like a couple of goddesses or someone comes with a message from a goddess and says like, no, the American freedom and justice is just too damn important to like let this important soldier just whatever, not go back to America. So you've got to help him. And then she has like a huge contest where Wonder Woman sort of like disguises herself and enters and wins.
Yes. She wears the domino mask.
Yes,
And
which
she-
is like, it's the smallest mask ever. Like, how would her mother not recognize her? Like, even the Clark Kent glasses, I think, would have been more effective.
Yeah, it's probably the least subtle of the three as far as like sending a message, right? Because she's standing up to her mother, but she's doing it within the rules, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I win, then I get to go. I'm going to conceal myself. I'm being respectful to my mother. I'm submitting to the authority, but also maybe taking those positive aspects of domination.
Yeah, like she's being dominant to her mother in submission to Steve. And so she wins and she gets chosen to go to America. So she forsakes her heritage and her immortality, to fight for the American way with her super speed, strength, wisdom, and her bulletproof bracelets of submission.
Yeah. Could you say America once more?
America? Is that not it? America?
It's America.
Yeah, I know. There's only one. So our next comic is Growdown Land. And so this is from 1944. This is from Sensation Comics. I basically looked for some of the weirdest ones I could find Because this is what's great about Wonder Woman is in the Golden Age is that like there's no shortage of very strange things going on.
It is immensely weird. I don't think if you there are things in it that are sort of like you're like, oh, okay, that this was a different time.
Yeah.
But then there are other things where it's like this must have been weird even at the time. Like
Yeah,
in the 1940s, this would be like surreal and bizarre. I do have to say the artwork though, Sensation Comics issue number 31. The artwork for it is so cool. There are like these grotesque elements that we can get into later, but it's a beautifully drawn book, I think.
Harry Peter is the artist. He says H.G. Peter, Harry George Peter.
It's good.
I don't know much about him. I think he was from like South Africa and he was born in like the 1880s. He died like not too long after this. He died in like, I think the mid 50s. But he is like a very strange artist. Like you couldn't draw a comic like this now because comics are more established now. And it would be hard to like have this kind of like naive understanding of what you're doing in a comic. But it really works, I think, for this. So the title page, it depicts Wonder Woman winking at the reader as she's spanked by a little girl with ringlets in her hair, but who's kind of like a giant little girl. Mm-hmm. And she's wearing a crown and she's spanking Wonder Woman with a brush. And there's an audience of clapping babies. And the narration posits this concept of Growdown Land, a paradise dimension that small kids can access psychically and where babies are the ruling class. As you grow, you stop believing in Growdown Land and you forget about it and you can't go there anymore. But Wonder Woman retains something of a child's spirit, so she can still go there. And that's basically the setup.
Yeah, it's like the what is that concept in Pinocchio of like the island of boys, Boy Island? What is it?
Boy, you're talking about the Epstein Island. And I don't know, I've seen this concept a couple different places, but I feel like I never had this growing up. Maybe I just forgot and stopped going to Growdown Land, but like Marston can remember it because he possesses a child's spirit. But the comic opens, Diana Prince, she's attending this sort of like trendy society luncheon hosted by Miss Selfa Modern, who loves meeting distinguished people. Then a very racist depiction of a mammy runs in to tell Mrs. Modern that her kids took the rowboat out and are trapped on the river filled with alligators.
Yeah, like if you know what the concept of a mammy is, if you've listened to Amos and Andy, if you've seen Buckwheat's Mother, like you understand the level. And I do have to say there is something that is even more uncomfortable than like hearing it is seeing the words written out in the dialect.
Oh yeah, like, you know, initially when I saw her, I was like, well, you know, as far as like racist depictions in old comics go in the 40s, this is by far not the worst I've seen. But then there's these other factors, like she's got that sort of like racist patois, and also the alligator thing, like that's also a racist trope because like there was all these postcards and advertisements at the time about alligators eating black babies. What? That was like a really popular thing. Yeah.
Oh, so that's why she was so fearful of it.
Yeah, so it like ties into that too. So it's like a broader racist mythology that's going on there.
So I guess we should say this mammy comes in and she's like, Miss Modern, your children are canoeing with alligators.
But she comes in and she's more like, oh, lottie. You know, like it's really racist. That was as far as I'm gonna go with the voice. But like,
yes.
It was more racist than that. Very racist.
Yeah. So she says, pardon me, Miss Modern, your kids are going to get eaten by alligators. This is urgent. And Miss Modern is she goes, my luncheon is far more important.
Yeah, she might as well say good riddance.
Yeah.
But, you know, Wonder Woman springs into action and she saves the children literally from the jaws of an alligator. They also ride the alligator, like the alligator like powers the boat, which is kind of fun.
Oh, it's so cool. And those alligators.
They're really fun.
Look up this comic, guys. The alligators they're so cool looking.
Yeah, I'll put the pages in the video version. So if you're listening to this in 3 weeks, listen to it again in 1 week on YouTube. I'll have them on there, but you can find this comic as well. Sensation Comics, number 31 from 1944, Growdown Land. It's the first story in the book. And then she brings the kids back to the house. There's another sort of racist butler character. And, you know, rather than being sort of relieved their kids were not eaten by alligators, she's mad at the kids for ruining her party, which has left her sick in bed. And we also find out that Mr. Modern works all the time. They haven't seen him for weeks. And so the next day, Wonder Woman checks in on the kids and finds out that, oh, they won't wake up. They're in a comatose state. And Wonder Woman knows that they don't have a disease or anything. They're actually just astral projecting to Growdown Land. And she puts herself in a trance and joins them there.
She holds their hands, and I have to imagine that that was like she's connecting with them, like some type of Inception co-dreaming scenario. That's how I imagined it.
Yeah, and then as we learned at the beginning, she retains some of her child spirit so she can go there even though she has a big body. And then when she arrives at Growdown Land, it's kind of like the first room with the River of Chocolate in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But if it was like populated by like babies and small children, like there's candy canes and ice cream growing there. But there's also these weird fascist elements everywhere. And I kind of thought that the point was going to be about that somehow, like fascism was an immature ideology. But, spoiler alert, the message is basically the opposite of that.
I didn't notice any fascist elements, except I guess those smart little caps that the police children are wearing. But this is where the illustrations, I really enjoy them. You have all of these children dressed in these childish adult outfits, like as judges, sucking on a candy cane, or a police officer on a rocking horse, yet still brandishing a blade, like a knife in her belt. And it's like this fun juxtaposition of children in children's clothes toying with these adult elements.
And there's some like good proto chicken fat in this. Like chicken fat wasn't like defined as a term yet, which it's the little details in the background. There's some good ones. Like at one point there's actually like a Sensation Comics on the ground.
Oh, no way.
The sign saying "Do not pick the lollipops."
Oh, yeah. Well, my favorite part, so she gets brought in front of the judge, the crime of being a grown-up. And the judge is not verbal yet, and so he hands down his verdict using blocks, toy blocks, spelling out the verdict. And the verdict is she guilty? And it's yes and no, because she has a child spirit, yet she is an adult.
So she gets sort of sentenced, like she's supposed to take the Grow Down syrup, which will de-age her. But before she does that, Babs Modern, the daughter of Mrs. Modern, uses Wonder Woman's lasso to bind Wonder Woman so that she's compelled to obey. She basically becomes her slave. And we learn that slavery is legal in Growdown Land as long as it's an adult. So before they give her the magic medicine, they send her to kidnap Miss Modern and Mr. Modern. And we see that Miss Modern is like, she's not actually ill. She was just faking it. And she's actually going to another party. She's happy her kids are dangerously ill. Wonder Woman carries her to catch Mr. Modern, and she takes him as well and brings them back to Growdown Land, where they're all slaves.
There is this kind of horror element in this. I mean, it's sort of like Sandman, right? Sandman can travel through dreams and like appear in your room or something. But this is even more freaky because you don't even have to be asleep, apparently. And Wonder Woman can travel through Growdown Land, through the children's dreams, and kidnap people.
From Growdown Land, she's able to do it because she can imagine going. There's like the rules are very strange. Anyway, and then she gets a kiss from the Queen, which is like a necklace with a star that says "Kiss." She's initiated into the Order of the Distinguished Service, but she's also spanked with a brush. And she's sitting there in front of like this audience of like cheering babies, and she says it's pretty tough being a grown down lady's slave. Very strange. And then they're all bound and blindfolded, all three adults, and they're given a triple dose of the magic medicine, Grow Down syrup, which makes them grow down.
And the adults drawn as children, it's so beautiful. Their proportions are all fucked up. Like, kids have big old heads, but these are like a little too, everything's just off a little bit. And it's so freaky looking.
Yes, it's very strange. Like the dad stays bald and has like hairy legs and a mustache. He keeps his Hitler mustache, but they behave like kids. They run around and have fun. And then eventually Etta Candy, who is Wonder Woman's friend, she's like the head of the Holiday Girls, or like a sorority, and Steve Trevor, they go to check in on Wonder Woman, who's apparently comatose. And they just say, hey, remember that time Wonder Woman went to sleep when we all went to a strange land? Let's do that. And so they do. And apparently it says that if you believe it's possible to get to Dreamland, then you can go there. So they arrive in Dreamland, and Etta gets a pass because she's got such a non-conforming body type.
She's so short and grotesque that they're like, this must be a child.
Yeah, she's like impossibly like pudgy and short. she looks like a kid's doll. So she gets in, but Steve Trevor, after getting like a kiss from, what the Japanese would call like a lowly Wonder Woman, he gets arrested for being an adult.
Yeah.
And so there's this weird thing where like Wonder Woman's mind is kind of like foggy in Growdown Land. So she tells Edda, like, don't let them know you're an adult or they'll de-age you. And she sort of helps Edda form a plan. And so they go to this sort of like place. This is like the Island of Boys or whatever, where all the kids hang out at night. And they hang out there because there's lots of lights and they're scared of the dark.
Yeah.
So Edda puts a penny on a light bulb.
This is the best part. They
like that.
They explicitly teach children how to blow a fuse.
I was like, that's very dangerous. Like,
I'll put this penny on the light bulb and screw it back in the socket. That'll blow a fuse and put the lights out. What? I have half a mind to try it.
I feel like it's something you probably shouldn't do. And anyway, so the lights go out, the kids go into a panic. Edda says, I started a panic. Some of these kids will die of fright, which I'm assuming she means not literally. So they go and get Steve because he's the only adult. And he uses a penny because they don't have fuses because they're stupid kids. He uses a penny to actually restore the lights. Yeah. Which I didn't know about this either. But he does say it's a temporary fix.
Yeah, they're shorting the circuit and it's not safe. So,
yeah. It's like an emergency measure, basically. And they're like, gee, you're smart. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, Wonder Woman realizes that the key to Growdown Land is that children imagine things which will become real to them. But the minute she realizes that Growdown Land itself is imaginary, she grows up.
Yeah.
And so she does, and then she grabs all the like adults that are either adults or kids and rush back. And having learned what it's like to be a kid, the modern family, they're respectful of their kids again. And Steve boasts about getting a kiss from Wonder Woman, even though she was 9 years old at the time. And it's like kind of creepy, Yeah. Like it's more creepy to boast about it than to like have it happen,
Yeah. Like if it was like if he would have been chill about it and like not brought it up, it would have been fine. Like, okay, it was Growdown Land. It was weird, but don't brag about it.
The fact that he's thinking fondly about it is kind of suspect, I think.
It's alarming, yeah.
So what do you think of this comic?
I really enjoyed it quite a bit. Compared to that, like the first foray, right? Her first appearance, the artwork is better. The story is more interesting because there's fewer words. Yeah, the thing that stands out the most is the fact that in a modern comic, this would have taken like half a year to tell the story. But in this, it's just like, okay, well, Edda and Steve are there now. And because they remember how to get there.
Yeah, it's like one of 7 stories in the book.
Yeah.
For 10 cents.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that they pack so much into it. And the bummer about it is that it's like very jarring transitions sometimes. But then again, it was not written for like how modern comics are written for adults. This is actually written for children.
The whole thing is just so stupid that like it's hard not to love it, like the whole concept of Growdown World, the way the plot sort of comes together, like what's her name? Miss I'm a Modern, or Miss what's her first name? Miss
Selfa Modern.
Yeah, it's Stelfa Modern.
Yeah.
The alligators. Like it's fun. It's a lot of fun, but it's also like, oh my God, ridiculous. DC
Comics has a lot of that in their history, like just very strange, bizarre things. Like with Captain Marvel, there's a lot of weird, like the Monster Society that they have that are just totally whimsical. And when good writers in the modern age get a hold of them, it's awesome. Like Grant Morrison, when he writes comics with all of these like weird characters, they're amazing.
Yeah, like nowadays it'd be like an edgy Wonder Woman story where she goes to Growdown Land and like there's like something really fucked up going on. Like it's like where kids who are being abused sort of like go to escape or something, and there'd be like a child ring or something going on.
Yeah.
Whereas this is it's so just goofy.
Yeah.
But then there's also this element of Marston himself. And so one of the things Marston wrote about was sorority initiations. And so Olive Byrne was in a sorority and she kind of like snuck him in or somehow got him in so he could observe some of their initiation rituals.
Yeah.
And he was like totally fascinated with what he called the baby party, where these sorority girls would like dress up like babies and like they'd be like punished and spanked by the older girls.
Yeah.
So it's like then you read this and it's like there's some interesting like symbolic messaging that he's trying to go for here that's like not very clear because it's so bizarre, and his theories are kind of like they're not really very accessible unless you're like, you know, a psychologist. It's like a Jungian or something.
Yeah, well, and they're not very straightforward.
Except when they are, like this one.
Exactly. I was going to say this one it's a lot more clear. This next one that we're going to talk about is Wonder Woman issue number 22.
This is from 47, and the story we're reading, so this is from Wonder Woman, so I think there's like 3 or 4 Wonder Woman stories in here. This is the last one. This is Jealousy Visits the Winged Women of Venus. We can jump right into it. The Holiday Sorority is helping Professor Astronomo.
Yeah. Hey, guess what type of science Professor Astronomo studies?
Phallic rockets. That's what he studies. Because like every time you see him in frame with this rocket, it's like positioned as if it's like his giant erection. And it's like even the way the girls are positioned on it, you know, there's someone here like kind of like polishing the shaft.
Oh my God.
Very bizarre. And so Beta Lambda, that's the Holiday Girls, they're assisting with this rocket development. But meanwhile, a pledge to Beta Lambda, Gel OC, she's angry because she wasn't asked to participate, and she's a real bitch about it. There's no other way to say it.
You know what? I mean, this is how I read it, is that she really wants to be a part of it, and she's eager, and then they overreact.
I don't know, because right off the bat, he says his response is, she's like, can I please work on the rocket, Professor? Like, first of all, she's not nice about it. She's thinking, I'm just as good at science as those other girls, only they vamped the professor. I'm going to ask Astronomo. So she's basically saying like, oh, they're just a bunch of sluts. And that's why the professor picked them. That's her thought, basically, right? Like to vamp someone is to like kind of seduce them. And then he says, it's almost finished and you really haven't shown enough scientific ability to be trusted on it. I'm sorry, which is fair, right? Like she's a freshman.
That is true.
But her response to that is, scientific ability? Blah! You don't know half as much as I do. You're a lot of sneaky chislers. Or chislers. I don't know how to pronounce that word.
I think Chisler.
Chisler. And so they take her to the beta rooms because, as Edda says, this jealous babe needs some discipline.
Now, this is where we get into, like, I guess a recurring theme, which is punishment, like explicit punishment. That, I mean, in this case is tied to humiliation. So Etta Candy, snacking on some candy at her table, has this girl dressed up like in a little kitty cat outfit with like paws and a mask and a bikini. And she's making her eat off of the floor like a cat.
And there's also a girl holding like a canoe paddle there. So there's an implication that she's been paddled. And the mitts are actually like bondage mitts. She can't use her hands. So like they've sort of like she's bound in a sense in this humiliating, highly sexualized costume. And they're teasing her saying like jealous cats can't even eat their cream like normal girls. If you can't eat it like a human, lap it up like a cat. Yeah. And she's so hungry. She wants to be in the sorority so bad. She eats her food, but the whole time she's just like miserable about it and like wishing ill will on them. And so they lock her up in the neophyte cell, and so that she won't interfere with the launch.
And there's like this, she does not miss an opportunity to humble these girls because it's like a barred window in the sorority, which is interesting. And she goes, the girls put these bars on themselves. They're easy to pry off.
It's like she wants to be a member of this group, and it's like she's not willing to like abide by the rules. Like they put bars on the windows, but you can get out. So the bars are just symbolic, right? But she's just like, fuck them. I'm the best. I should be in charge. And she climbs out the window like a little spoiled brat with tied up sheets, which rip. And luckily, Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, had been invited to the rocket launch. And she uses her super speed to sort of turn into Wonder Woman and catch her just in time.
Well, you know, they say no good deed goes unpunished. Wonder Woman saves her. And then she's like, bro, were you escaping from the neophyte cell? And she's like, yeah, but they were just being mean. She lets her go.
She does say the betas are a little severe. So she's like, I'll cut this girl some slack.
Yeah.
And like jealousy lies. She says, thanks. I promise never to disobey my superiors again. And then in her thought bubbles, I'll prove those sly meanies they are not my superiors.
Hence, I can disobey them.
Yeah. And she sneaks onto the rocket, which we didn't mention this earlier, but there's some exposition where the rocket is unmanned or unwomaned because even the rate of a woman would throw off the rocket and it'll crash. But of course, jealousy isn't privy to this information because she wasn't supposed to be involved.
No, sir.
So the crowd shouts and cheers as the rocket ejaculates into space and disappears into the blue of space. And then they're looking at the footage of the rocket back at command headquarters, and they have cameras inside, and they realize that jealousy is inside and that this rocket is going to crash into Venus and she's going to die.
Now, to hurry the plot along, they have no way of saving her, but Wonder Woman conveniently has this friend named Paula.
Ex-Nazi Paula, former Nazi.
Former Nazi, friend of Elsa, as we like to say. And she
No
goes,
longer. Friend of Elsa no longer.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. She says, hey, what's up with your magic lamp that can send people anywhere in the galaxy? She gets zipped on over with these beams. They materialize her onto Venus.
And she can't bring her back right away. So it's not working. It's a one-way trip for now. They're going to be able to bring her back later. And so the rocket is heading in fast. Wonder Woman arrives just in time. I noticed the rocket kind of becomes less phallic at this point and more like boob-like, I think, as it's landing. Maybe I'm reading into that too much, but Wonder Woman catches it and she takes jealousy prisoner because she doesn't want her to become jealous of the lovely winged Venusian girls.
Yes.
And so Venus is another like all woman planet, only they have like beautiful fairy wings. And Queen Desira arrives.
Well, and then so they imprison her, right? Queen Desira is like, listen, we have a prison in name only. You can kind of come and go as you please. We're faster than you. We'll catch you.
Yeah.
We bind the wings of the other Venusians so that we can catch them.
Yeah, so she's not doing hard time or anything.
No, you got an ankle bracelet.
But of course, jealousy is fucking pissed off because Wonder Woman's going to the palace to be entertained, and she's going to like a school, basically. But we find out at school that it's a little more insidious than that because the girls wear these golden girdles, these like magic girdles that keep thoughts of rebellion out of their minds. So when she first meets them, they're like, oh, well, we're happy to be here because we're being trained to be good and we want to be part of society. But they're only saying that because they're forced to by the constricting girdles that they have to wear.
Why? I mean, is that any worse than like the lasso of truth that Wonder Woman subjects randos to?
I mean, I'm still saying it's kind of like probably a better form of prison, I guess. It's no different than like some other forms of subduing people. But, it's more insidious than they let on initially. At first, they're just like, we just bind their wings and they understand that they have to be there. And it's like, no, because the second that jealousy escapes, she gets the lasso off and then ties up the guard with it in like complete shibari, like BDSM bondage. Like... it's a tall panel. It's like they've gone out of their way to make sure, let's get that whole thing in there. Like it's some sort of like, fetish cartoon by Bill Ward. And she undoes their girdles and they become kind of like her army. And immediately they go and they use the lasso to tie up Wonder Woman and basically threatens to murder the queen unless they make her the queen, and like all the Venusians who don't work for jealousy have to have their wings bound so that she can control them. And
then in the final 3 panels, Wonder Woman does a backflip, escapes, and subdues jealousy, saves the day.
Hog ties her, yeah. And then jealousy says, I want to learn, Wonder Woman. I now know that a jealous girl is no good to anybody, not even herself.
Yeah. So there's growth there.
Yeah, a little didactic at the end. What'd you think of this one?
I mean, this is the clearest one where it's like, you need to submit to authority. It is like, you cannot just be selfish and seek your own ends. You have to understand your place in the world or in a hierarchy.
Yeah. And I think there might be a bit of like, Elizabeth, stop being jealous of Olive. Like I think that's probably a factor, right? Like, because he lived in this polyamorous relationship, so I'm sure jealousy was a factor at times, right?
Oh my God. Hey, I have a question. How much do you think he got say in the art though? Because so much of, like everybody talks about his relationship, his interest in submission and domination, but he didn't draw these comics.
No, Harry Peter drew them mostly, but you got to imagine Harry Peter's drawing all these comics. Marston's already an educational consultant for DC, so
Yeah.
I'm sure he's there, sort of like giving some information about what to draw. Do you think Marston's like? What do you think his intentions are? Do you think he's getting off on this stuff?
No, I don't. I mean, listen, I did a cursory glance of this man's history, and I think I texted you on the subject of William Marston. I don't think he's a sex pervert. I think those were my words. And I am curious as to how much through our modern understanding of that culture of BDSM or whatever and human sexuality, do we project things onto William Marston that maybe weren't there?
Personally, I think he just given his like stated philosophy that like looks at BDSM activities between consenting adults as like healthy. I think, he probably was, somewhat aroused by some of these concepts, but I don't think his intention was to like, he wasn't creating porn for kids, like I don't think his intention was to arouse the reader. I think his intentions towards the reader were pretty pure. Like I think he, like when he says he wants to create, this psychological propaganda for the new type of woman he wants to rule the world, I think that is what he's doing. But I think he probably enjoys it a little bit too.
Yeah, to me they read much more like morality tales that don't have the benefit of something like the Brothers Grimm, right? Where the Brothers Grimm, they copied down stories that had existed for hundreds of years and had been refined and perfected. And this is a morality tale that he's writing from his house in New York. And he's got two women nagging him nonstop. He just wants to go to Grow Down World.
Well, I mean, like Olive Byrne, for example, she actually wore bracelets like Wonder Woman instead of like a wedding ring,
Oh,
sort of symbolizing her connection to both of them.
yeah.
And so like there are some elements that were brought in, like the clothing, the bondage. A lot of that stuff was brought in from his relationship. So you got to imagine that like, when he's writing a story and it's like, oh, now it's time for the sorority to spank my wife. Like there's probably a little bit of pleasure there, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't think Wortham was right to say he was like doing like pornography or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's just fly through this one really quick. But we also looked at Woman Wonder from Mad Magazine number 10. And I checked with the Mad cover site. And as near as I can tell, this is the only real Wonder Woman parody other than a Mad look at Wonder Woman in, I think 2017 that Mad ever did. I don't think they did like Linda Carter's Wonder Woman or the Wonder Woman movie as a parody. So it's just kind of this.
No, I don't think so.
So we can skip the whole first page.
Well, before we do, the art by Bill Elder, and God, it's so much fun to look at. You talked about chicken fat before, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
he like coined the term, and he certainly is pretty fucking good at it.
Well, I'll mention this now then. There's a great piece of chicken fat running throughout this whole thing that I just love. It's this weird sort of like hunched over gorilla monster chasing the woman.
Yeah.
And it appears here in the background and then running the other way. And then when they're in the plane, they're like parachuting. And then they're on the island. And then
nice.
in the cave, they're carved into the wall.
Oh, wow.
Then they're on the cover of the newspaper at the end. So it's like a great bit of like a running gag in chicken fat.
Yeah.
And this whole comic, this is honestly one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Mad Magazine parody or like Mad comic parody at least. Because it's got everything. It's got, of course, Kurtzman and Elder. That's my favorite combo in these Mads. It's got sex appeal. It's violent. It's subversive. It's playing on a comic, so they get to like actually play with the medium in an interesting way. Yeah, it's just definitely one of my favorites.
It is. It's beautiful to look at.
So Unlike the tall, handsome, square-jawed Steve Trevor, Steve Adore is a nebbish, pimply little troll of the type standard in these mad comics. You know, think, I can't remember what they call the Shadow one.
I was going to say the Mole. It's not as
Mole,
moley
yeah,
as the Mole, but...
A little bit less so than Mole, but there's a lot of characters like this that you see in Mad, where it's this like impossibly short, pimply, ugly guy. And he looks a little bit like Harvey Kurtzman side profile. I'm not sure if that's intentional. So they're at makeout point, and like Wonder Woman's just crushing him. You might like this as a former serviceman.
Mm-hmm.
She's got the bars on her arm go all the way down her sleeve.
Yeah.
And then Steve only has one bar. And so he gives her a postcard from his pocket that says Nivlim has a plot that he's hatching on the island of Coney, and she's got to go there to stop him. So she takes off to go change into her Wonder Woman costume, and Steve is trying to follow so he can see. First she goes into a phone booth, but Super Duper Man is already in there changing.
Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, so she's got to go find another one. And I love, like, the baby outside of the... like a crying baby in a basket outside of the telephone booth. Oh, my God. So funny. And then she comes bounding back. She's in her costume. She changed inside her plane, which, as we all know, is an invisible glass plane. So yeah. Steve has got, like, his binoculars there. He's got a microscope. He's got a telescope.
Yeah, the cracked glass and smoking eyepieces of the different speculating instruments.
And we should say that, like, Woman Wonder cuts quite a figure in this, more so than Wonder Woman. Woman Wonder is a little bit more adult, shall we say. She looks like she'd belong more in, like, Little Annie Fanny. So they get in her plane, which is like a seltzer bottle. And they have some turbulence, and they spin around like a Decca record. It actually says Decca, and they're spinning around.
What is a Decca record?
Oh, it's just like, that was like a record label, like just a record. And it says, Waltz Me Round Again, Willie.
Oh, waltz me around again, Willie. Around, around, around.
Oh, so I thought, like, when you were like spinning like one, I thought there was like a visual reference that's...
Well, she looks like a record, right? It's got the like the center of the record right there, and they're spinning around. And it says Decca on it. And then they're upside down. And then Steve Trevor's in the back, and she's like, what are you doing? And it turns out he's actually outside of the plane falling. And then, so she lands her plane on a dime, and so everything's fine, but she accidentally slams the door, which smashes the glass plane. And we actually see the mole there, speak of the mole.
Oh, yeah, digging up there on the beach.
Yeah, so she heads into the cave, and then there's all this stuff to entice her. There's fresh mink coats from Washington, D.C., there's silk, rayon, nylon, corduroy, and glass ladies' hose. Handy Fix-It Co. We fix leaky sewers, spittoons, and basketball games. So she goes in and she encounters Nivlim, and she's trying to figure out what his plot is. She asks him if he's going to steal a hydrogen bomb or sink the whole continent. But it turns out what his plan is to swipe a bunch of Coke bottles and sell them for the deposit. And he's short, and he's kind of reminiscent of Batboy and Reuben. I think that's the name of their Batman parody. Yeah, they did 2 issues earlier. Like, not quite, because Wally Wood drew that one. You know, it's kind of implied that he's Batman. I
was going to say, it's like, I don't know how you'd be any character other than Batman.
He's short, so he's standing on a TV with Howdy Doody on it.
Well, and his cape is the length for a full-sized man. And so when he gets down from the TV, it's like bunched up at his feet. And I have to say, I don't know if this is some pop culture reference at the time, but he has these 2 like strongman bodyguards in the red underwear and the big beards and shaved bald heads. And I love those dudes.
Mickey and Spillane.
Yeah.
That's their name. So they shoot at her with their Tommy guns, and she blocks it with her special bracelets made of the hardest substance known, with which she can catch and bounce away the bullets. She's got a tattoo that says Father. She's also wearing a little propeller beanie through this whole thing, which just like really kind of adds to the fun of it. And then standing in a pile of like deflected bullets with a sash that says Miss Tomato Pie for some reason. This is like the greatest part. This is where Nivlim he basically quits the comic. He says, wait a minute, this story's getting ridiculous. Granted, maybe your bracelets are strong enough to deflect the substance, and maybe you can even somehow move fast enough to catch those bullets. But, it's impossible that you wouldn't be, that you could withstand the impact of point blank bullets from 2 Tommy guns without getting knocked over or shattering your wrists. He actually leaves the comic and steps off to the side. The panels are actually slightly smaller so that he can kind of step into the gutters.
Oh, I love that. Well, it's funny what you were saying about where you're like, it says Miss Tomato Pie for some reason. And that can be said of like 90% of the chicken fat in this cartoon. Just like these little things slipped in for some reason. The slingshot like taped to her leg, and then you have these random tattoos that appear throughout the comic on different parts of her body.
But I do feel like the Miss Tomato Pie is like especially weird.
It is, yeah.
So anyway, like Ben Shapiro, he defeats her with facts and logic, but he promises that in return for her gentlemanly conduct, he will not harm a hair on his head. But unfortunately, Mickey and Spillane will, so they beat the snot out of her with brass knuckles. It's very violent. And then she's tied up, but she uses her vibrating powers, which we didn't actually encounter this in the comics that we read, but that was a really common trope in Wonder Woman, is that she would vibrate really fast to get out. And they have her like in like a milkshake mixer.
Yeah.
And then she says, okay, I'll just knock them out so that I can save the day. But she decides to kill them anyway, leaving her John Hancock with the Tommy gun.
And it's like visually, I love this. Mad, it appeared in Mad a lot, even as a magazine, but people being shot in the head, and you have like this very large circle where it has like, they draw like a little 3D effect where it's like just a little perfect hole punch right in their noggin. I don't know why I love that so much.
So then she tries to, she's weakened from the battle, but she tries to use her lasso, which also requires vibration, to her impossibly strong platinum mystic lasso. But it turns out that Nivlin hawked it years ago to pay for his Coney Island hideout. And so all she's got left is she tries to call her plane, her invisible plane, but she forgets that she had smashed it earlier. So just a pile of broken glass just lands on her. And so then she's sitting there. She's in a pile of broken glass, just reaching up. She's all cut up and she's crying. And she says, I'm helpless. All I have left to save my life with is my feminine charm and beauty. And she lifts her tearful face to him in supplication. And that moves Nivlin.
Yeah,
but it mostly moves his hobnailed boot to smash in her tearful face, and he just like jumping on her, and he like football punts her right through the goalposts, and she realizes that, wait a second, you're not Nivlin, as he says, I'm sick of you knocking me down in boxing and beating me at roller derby and in thumb wrestling, and now I'm sending you back to the kitchen, sweetheart. And it's revealed that actually Nivlin was Steve Adore all along. And they get married, and Diana Banana is now content with the normal female life of working over a hot stove. and it says, and Steve can even knock her down in boxing. And we see Steve sitting on his like recliner chair. Wonder Woman's just looking miserable in the kitchen, like so many Greatest Generation mothers. And like the food's on fire, and there's these awful brats running around. And it's a real inversion of the Wonder Woman story.
Well, and especially understanding Marston's motivation for Wonder Woman, it makes it so much better, this inversion of it.
Kurtzman's having none of it. He's like there's no respect for like Marston's, social engineering project.
Absolutely none. This is deliberate disrespect, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's just as much schlock as any other comic to Harvey Kurtzman. So there you go. What do you think of these comics that we read?
I think they're great. I have to say I'm partial to the Mad Woman Wonder. I will say this does make me want to go back and read some more Golden Age Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah, they're a blast. Like anything in Sensation, anything in Wonder Woman up until I think at a certain point Harry Peter stops being the artist. I think there's a new artist that gets brought in.
Okay.
But like all the Harry Peter stuff is like, it's all like that. I remember I was teaching this class on comics, And so I was doing a little bit of history of comics every class. And I just wanted to go find a couple scenes of Wonder Woman that were kind of like, could be construed as like sexualized or something. And I just remember realizing like, oh, this is very easy to find. It's in every single issue multiple times.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it was hard to pick just a couple for this podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, idiot. Hit like and subscribe. And hey, if you want more black PODRZEBIE podcast, check out the links in the show description.